Quran is a timeless miracle, a rational miracle, that is definitely the words and the expression of the sole cause of the universe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know the Quran has a timeless challenge to humanity. In Surah Baqarah, verse 23, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you are in doubt, if you are doubtful, talking to humanity here, if you are in doubt about that which we have sent to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then bring one chapter like it, and call your witnesses and helpers besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you are indeed truthful. Now, according to Ibn Abbas, Qurtubi, Ibn Kathir, Jalalain, this challenge is a timeless challenge that has to do with the literary and linguistic miracle of the Quran. What is the literary and linguistic miracle of the Quran? Essentially, there's 5 major arguments. Is the unique literary form, the mechanics, the structure of the language, the unique linguistic genre, the eloquence of the Quran, the rhetoric of the Quran, and an example and also an argument that you all well know, which is the rational deduction of the Quran. So let's just talk about some of these arguments. The unique literary form. Generally, in the Arabic language, it's well known that there are 2 major groups of forms, literary forms in the Arabic language. One is called saj'a, one is called mursal, and the other is called poetry. Now, saj'a is basically rhyme prose. So it's like speech I'm talking to you today, that it's split into an irregular rhythm that has a rhyme at the end. Mursal is basically straightforward speech. It's like the speech I'm talking to you today that is intended to evoke some kind of emotion or fear or intellectual activity to the masses. Furthermore, poetry is further split into 16 different rhythmical patterns called the al-bihar, which comes from the Arabic word seas. So it's just like the wave. So the rhythmical patterns are quite metrical. For example, in Arabic poetry that follows the metrical pattern of at-tawil basically goes ba 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 ba. That's the rhythm of the poem. Now, when we scan all of the Arabic literature, past or present, we see that all of the forms of literature fall into saj'a or mursal or the rhythmical patterns of Arabic poetry. However, it is the only Quran, the only expression in Arabic, in history, that cannot fit into any of these known forms. It's not saj'a because it's not rhyme prose. It has its own internal rhythm, and it has stylistic differences that are totally different from any known form of rhyme prose. It's not straightforward speech because we know the Quran is full of eloquence, rhythm, sound, poetry, rhetoric. And it's not any of the al-bihar because it's not a poem. It doesn't have metrical, rhythmical patterns. Like in the words of the famous Orientalist Abari, he says the Quran is not prose, it's not poetry, but it's a unique fusion of both. The unique linguistic genre. This is a modern argument based on modern linguistic techniques. The Quran combines cohesive elements of language and rhetorical elements of language in such a way and marries them together that if you were to divorce them from each other, take them away from each other, the Quran would cease to sound like the Quran, and it would lose its communicative effect and its psycholinguistic effect. What is rhetoric? Rhetoric is language that is intended to please or persuade, such as the use of sound, choice of words, rhythm. And also cohesiveness is aspects in language, like the Arabic particle wa, which is end, that links different sentences and concepts together. So from a unique linguistic genre point of view, according to Abdul Rauf and much consensus among the Muslim and non-Muslim linguists, they say that the Quran has this unique interrelation and marriage between cohesive elements of language and rhetorical, which cannot be found in any Arabic literature, past or present. Then we have eloquence. The Quran chooses its words, its word order, its particle order, the phrase order, in such a way that has been unparalleled. Its meticulous accuracy is unparalleled. It chooses its words in such a way to invoke the intended meaning to be portrayed. It's rhetoric. It has an abundance of rhetorical devices. As I just discussed, rhetorical devices are language to please and persuade. And there's no other text that can be described as a sea of rhetoric other than the Quran. If we scan any of the Arabic literature, past or present, the Quran has the most rhetorical devices than any other living text. Then we have the final argument, which is the rational deduction. Rational deduction. It's very simple. We don't even need to know one word of Arabic or understand any linguistic technique or have any device, plethora of devices, literary devices, because it's based on a consensus. There's a consensus amongst Muslim and non-Muslim scholarship, such as Arbery, Muir, Margulis, and Muslim scholarship such as Abdul Halim, Abdul Rauf, Jamakshari, Jurjani, etc., that the people at the time of revelation were the best at expressing themselves in the Arabic language. There is no argument amongst academic community, layman community, popular culture, or anywhere else. The people at the time of revelation were the best place to try and challenge the Quran. Now we all know that they failed. There's a famous sheikh, a sister who was born in 1917 and studied at Al-Azhar University. She became a linguist scholar, and she was one of the only scholars in Al-Azhar to compile every single challenge of the Quran in history and refute every single challenge. So we know the challenges failed. So if it can't be from the best people placed to challenge the Quran, the Arabs at the time of revelation, then it can't be a non-Arab, because they require the Arabic language. So who's left? Some people may argue the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the one who was the source of the Quran. But then we may question, he was also Arab himself. And surely, in the modern world, when someone develops post-impressionism as an art form, then someone is able to replicate that art form, even though it was unique in the beginning. So why has no one been able to replicate the Quran, even though we have the blueprint of the Quran itself, and we have the tools in place, which are the finite grammatical rules and finite letters of the Arabic language? Furthermore, we know that the hadith, and we have mutawatir hadith, which are on the same level from a rational point of view as the Quran, that we cannot doubt their authenticity. And they're in a totally unique, different style to the Quran. So how can a man, or any human being, utter orally two different distinct styles over a 23-year period? This is impossible. I studied psychology at university, and we studied the science called psycholinguistics. And the processes that are developed in language makes it impossible for someone to utter two different styles over a 23-year period. So from a physiological point of view and a rational point of view, this is impossible. So what's the next possible source? We discussed at the beginning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, the Creator exists. So via rational deduction, we know that the only possible source is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in summary, it cannot be an Arab because we have their challenges and they all failed. It cannot be a non-Arab because they need to speak Arabic. It can't be the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam because he had hadith that were in direct contrast to the Quran with regards to style and structure. The only entity that we know exists left is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So hence, it's a very real, very rational argument that the Quran can only be from the Creator.